Okay, so hi, how's it going? I'm going to talk about for loops today, and this is in answer to a question I got about doing diagonal lines with the for loop, so I just thought I would go over that. So, how do we create diagonal lines with a for loop? So, let's just think about this to start with. Often, a good way to work out a for loop is to repeat the line manually a few times, and that sort of is going to show you where you need to where the variable is going to go. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly switch on my iPad here. Here we go. And let's just do a bit of a think about this. So if I want to draw diagonal lines like this, perhaps, I can think of this in the grid. So let's just, that's not very good. Let's draw a grid. Okay, so I'll draw my top line as well. And I don't know, it's not going to be a perfect square, I don't think. Or maybe it is. There we go. So yeah, I've got my not proper square here, just as a. So I want my first point to be here. So my first line is actually in the top corner and it's just a dot. And so if you remember when we write a line, we write it like this. So we go a line, open brackets, and we specify the x and the y position of one side of the line, so the leftmost side of the line. So at this dot, it would be 0 and 0. So I'll type in 0, comma 0. And then I type in the position of the end of the line. And at this point, we're just in the top corner. We're actually a dot, not a line, but we'll think of it as a line. So we'll go 0, comma 0 again. And we should see here, I'm just going to actually put the line, no, sorry, not the line, just put my pen down, the stroke width. Let's give it some width, so let's say 5, just so we can, no, maybe 5 is too much, let's go 3. And that way we can see we've got, stroke width. It's stroke weight, not stroke width. There we go, stroke weight. And here we go, we've got this dot you can kind of barely see in the corner here. Alright, oh, well, now you can maybe see it, but my iPad is over it. So there, you can see this dot here. Alright, so that's my first, I'll put my semicolon there, that's my first line. So my second line, and I'm actually just going to jump back to drawing this. Okay, so my second line goes from here to here. So this would be, let's say I'm going in 50 increments down and across. So then it would be the x position is 0, the y position is 50, and then here the x position is 50 and the y position is 0. Let's try that right this here. So we go 0, 50, 50, 0. So then the next one, we do the same. So we go 0 still, 100, 100, and 0. And so like this, and so on. So that sort of helps me visualize it. And let's go hide this window now. So let's think about that in the code. So next line, let's go line, what did I say? I said 0, comma 50, so x50, x0, y50. You can have the spaces in there, I just like to be neat. And then the next one is 50 and 0. And let's draw that and have a look. So there's our first line. And so then our second line, I mean, you don't always have to do this. This is just a good way to visualize it before we use the for loop. So there's our next line. So we're going up in 50 increments of 50 because we're starting at 0, 0, 0, 0 and moving across. Okay, so The for loop is going to repeat this, except we're going to, instead of these two values here, and this is working this way because we've got a square, instead of these two values here, we're going to use a variable because this is our repeated element. And we're going to use the variable that comes with the for loop. So the for loop works like this. We say for, and actually I'm just going to comment those out just so we've got them as reference. So then I set up my variable. And when you do this in a for loop, you don't need to declare a variable. It knows that this is going to be a variable. So I go I equals 0. So we're starting at 0. And then I say how long I want this to go for. So I want this to go for, well, let's just start. We're going to change this in a minute, but we're going to start with just saying it's going to be the width, or it's going to be the height in, well, right now width and height are the same. So while I is less than 400, and this is, we're going to change this, but this is a good way to show it. While I is less than 400, we want to add 50 to I. So we want this line to repeat, adding 50 to the variable I. And we do this slightly differently if we had two different values here, but because we've got the same value, we only need to do a one for loop. We'd have to do an embedded for loop otherwise. So we go I plus equals 50. And then we need to put the actual line of code here. So this is set up the variable. So this is the statement now we want this to work on. So let's say line, and it's the second two values which are changing. So 0 is always going to be 0, as we can see from when we drew it out. I, comma, 0. And let's play this and see if I'm right. Yep, so there we go. And so our first thing that we've come across is that we're only going halfway across the image. You notice that our canvas here is 400 by 400, so I'm actually just going to put width here. The variable width, and that way if I change my canvas size, it will update here as well. Just to prove that, there you go, it's exactly the same. But this is only going halfway across the screen. So what I can do here is I actually want it double that. So I'll just put width times 2. Now it goes the whole way across the screen. We could also go width times 2 plus I if we want this final dot here. So let's, I think, I guess, where's my mouse? There's my mouse. No, it did not like that. Okay. Yeah, they seem to have crashed my computer doing that. Ignore that. Just while I'm waiting for my browser to sort itself out with this, what I've done here is I've actually sent it into a bit of an infinite loop, and it is not happy, and my browser's trying to render it, but it's not working. If this happens to you, eventually you can, I'm waiting, my browser should say, hey, do you want me to stop this? Or else I can just start a new window, which I might do. Okay, I'm back, and here we go. So what did I do wrong there? I added a plus I here, but because I is always changing, it really didn't know how to calculate the width times 2 plus I, because it kept going up and up, and yeah, it kept extending out. It didn't know what to do. The correct way to do this would to be actually to set up a variable called increment. So I'll make a variable, I'll make a global variable, so that's why I'm making it above function, and I'll say variable, let's say, let's just call it inc for increment, equals 50. And this is actually really useful because later on, if I want to change the spacing between my diagonals, I can do that pretty easily. So here, instead of 50, I can put inc. And also here, instead I can go width times 2 plus inc. Okay, and let's just play that. And there we go. There's you can sort of see there's a dot. I'm actually over the corner of it here, but there is a dot. You have to just take my word for it. No, look, wait, not that. There we go. Look, oh, you can't even see on this screen. Honestly, there's a dot. Um, I'd put the stroke width back up. So stroke weight, stroke weight, isn't it? We're going to find out. Let's go 5. And look, there's my dot. There it is. You can see it. Oh, there. Okay. Well, so that's drawing diagonal lines one way. I'm just going to take this stroke width down because that is chunky. Okay, so now let's think about lines going in the other direction. And again, I'm going to start just by drawing this out. So let me turn on my iPad again. Let's see, is it working? Yep, it's working. Okay, so the other one we want to do, so we've got them going down like this way. If I want to do them from the other way, I'm going to be starting at the bottom here. And so again, we start at 0, 0, 0, 0. And then my next one will be going this way, like this. So my next line is going to be the x position of the top of the line is 50. And the y position is 0. And the x position here is... Have I got that right? No, I haven't. Hang on. So maybe all people think differently. This is how it works for me, and I'm still getting it wrong. So actually, my x position is 0, and my y position is height, and we're going to use variables here. So it's height minus 50. And then my x position is 50, and my y position here is 0. So then my second one, I'm running out of space here. We've got my x position is 0 again. My y position is height minus 100. Then I've got 100 and 0. I think that's right. So let's actually try it in the code. I'll turn the iPad off again. Alright, so I'm just going to make my screen a bit smaller again because we've got more code now. Okay, so now still within my draw. So let's do it manually first. So we go line, and actually instead of 50, I can use this. Well, no. Once we get to the for loop, I'll use increment. So line, first one is 0. Actually, and I said it was. Just quickly go back to my iPad. I don't know if you caught my mistake here. It's actually 0 and height. So x is 0. No, x is 0. Y is height. And then the other two are 0. So I did. So then we go, okay, so turn this off again. So actually I want this at height. And then my next one is 0, my next one is 0. And let's just double check that I'm thinking this through correctly. And I'm just going to I'm going to hide this for loop for now. And no, I've got a straight line here. So what's going on? So I'm going 0 height. Because my top of the line is here at height, it should actually be width. No, it should be... Okay, so I'm not sure who's caught my mistake. Honestly, that's why I'm getting it wrong. No, okay, so it should be 0 height, 0 height, because this second y value was what was bringing the line up to there. So if I change this one to Ew, how we go. So yeah, this is it wrong. And if I change this to height as well, it's late at night. Okay, here we go. So now we've got this dot in the corner. So that's what I want to start with. And then our next one should be line equals, and maybe I had it written down wrong on the iPad as well. Let's find this out. So I want it to be 0 and then height minus 50. And then the second one, I want it to be 50 as was written down, and 0. That's what I've got written down, although now I'm beginning to doubt myself. So let's actually play it and see. No, that is not what we want. And that's because, again, we don't want it at 0. We want it at width minus 50. I don't know what's going on. Okay, so we go width minus 50. Right now, I could actually substitute height in here because and this should be 0. So just take a look at the line above and it's clear that this one is the one that will be changing. No, I'm still wrong. Okay, yeah, so actually, sorry, my brain's not working properly right now. So we've got this, so yeah, we've got this line here, and this part's right, so it's at 0 and height minus 50. I actually want it down here, so the x position is at 50. The x position, it's moving along 50, yes. And the y position is at height. So you can see here my x position is correct, but my y position is wrong. So that was probably obvious to a lot of people, but it took me a few steps. Anyway, okay, so now we've got our second line. Just for good measure, and because I seem to be a bit inept at this right now, I'm going to do the third line. So line, this time I've got to get it right. So 0, height, minus 100, and then 100, and height. And you can start to see the pattern here, unless I've gotten it wrong again. Fingers crossed. Woohoo! There we go. Done. So now we've sort of outlined what pattern I need to follow. We can set up the for loop. So again, we need a for loop. I can reuse I because unless you declare a global variable, like if I declare a variable up the top here, any of my functions can use it. If I declare this variable within a for loop, it's only going to exist inside the for loop. So I can use I again. We did embedded ones before, and that's why we used two different letters. Maybe you don't remember, I'm not even going to talk about that. Okay, so for I equals 0, well, so I want this to keep going until it reaches 400 again, or whatever the width is. So I'm going to say like I is less than, I'm going to stick with height for this one. Later on I might make a video of diagonal lines for a rectangle, because that's going to be a bit different. So well, I is more than, geez. Okay, less than the height. So keep doing it until this condition is not true. What do I want to do? I want to add increment to y. So plus equals increment. And then I need my statement. And what is going on here? Oh yeah, okay, so here I've got need a semicolon, not a comma. So notice, yeah, when you get those little errors, have a look at what it's saying. If it doesn't make sense, just check your syntax. Okay, so next up, I'm going to go line, and I'm just going to actually also turn these off again. But I'm going to refer to them. So line, so it's always 0, so that doesn't change. And then it's height minus I. And then it's I. and height. Again, I don't need the spaces between all of this. That's up to you. It doesn't read the spaces. And I finish with a semicolon, and there we go. And again, we've got the same problem. It's only going half the way. So here, I don't want it to stop once it reaches here. I want it to stop when it reaches height times 2 plus ink. And there we go. So I'm just going to uncomment this one as well. And play again. And now we've got a nice crosshatch going on. So the next thing I was asked was how to turn this into a whole heap of triangles. And this one is much easier. We want to just have lines starting at 50 down. So there are other ways to do this too. You could do squares like this and turn them on their side, but this way is fine for now. There's always a few ways to do things. Okay, so just for, as you can see, I'm not that clear-headed right now, so I'm just going to turn these ones off and start fresh. So the first thing I want to do is I want to draw a line, and I want the x position to be 50. No, I don't. I want the there we go. I want the x position to be 0, and I want it to start at 50 down, because I said I want it to start around here. In fact, I could, I'm just going to put 50 for now. We'll use the ink later. And then I want the end of the line to be at the width. And I still want it to be 50 down. Okay, there's my line. Actually, just to check if that's in the right spot, I'm just going to put these back on. There we go. And actually I need one further up because I probably want these, now I look at it, at 25 increments. So let's just, I'm going to copy and paste this line just to save a bit of trouble. And I'm going to change this first one to 25. And 25. And let's see how that looks. And there we go, we're starting to get triangles here. This top section. Alright, so that noted, I'm going to want to use a different variable than increment. Let's put a third line just to double check this. So I need my next line down at 75 down. There we go. So because, yeah, just because. I'm going to change my stroke width back to, I'm just going to get rid of it because stroke weight 1 is fine. Okay, that's a bit nicer. Okay, so again, I can sort of see this pattern that I want, and I'm going to do another for loop. Let's go for, I'm going to comment these out for a second. If you press Control and the slash on your keyboard, that's the shortcut for commenting, or you can manually do the two slashes. But it's a lot easier to do the shortcut. So for I equals 0, as I mentioned, I'm going to need a second variable that's 25 because my increments are only 25 this time. So I mean, I could stick with this and go increment over 2, which I'm going to do actually, because that way, if I change increment, I can, I just don't have to change both of the variables. Okay, so I equals 0. So then, while I equals less than the height, we don't need to do height over 2 this time because we should, or shouldn't, let's see, I don't think we will, because we're only going to the bottom of the screen, which is the height. By the way, the height variable is whatever is set here as your height. Same with the width variable, it's whatever is set here. Okay, so I've got that ready, and now we will go, And also, I'm using them both here. If this was going to be a rectangle, I would want to do this a little bit differently. But let's just do it in a square for now. I think. Well, I might want to put manual numbers in if I was doing a rectangle. I'm not going to think about that for now. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to, say equals plus equals, come on. And instead of increment, because remember I wanted 25, I actually want half of the increment, so I can just put increment over 2. And then in here I'll repeat this line. So line is 0, comma, comma I, and width, and I. Put my semicolon in, and away we go. And so that's how you can get triangles across the screen in a square. Let's watch me break it. So you can also see here that there's a line drawn along the top, but not along the bottom. So we could actually go height plus inc over 2. And just to get that bottom line in there if we wanted it repeated. Okay, so let's see what happens. So yeah, there's a whole heap of triangles across the screen. So what happens now if we change the height of our canvas, because we are referring to the variables. So let's change it to 800, and I'm just going to quickly zoom back to normal size. There we go. I'll zoom in a little bit. Okay, let's change it to 800 and play. And actually it still works, but you can see that it doesn't keep going at the height. That surprised me. I didn't think that was going to work. I've been doing other stuff all day. I'm blaming being tired. Okay, so we can fix this then, because it's only because we're using height here. The line works. This one works. Because we're using width to stop this here, I think I can just put height. Fingers crossed. Yep, and there we go. So if I were to change the width though, still works. Okay, because yeah, height is more than width. If I was to change the width to be more than the height, let's put the height back down to say 500. We're missing a little bit at the end here, so I would say whichever one of these you use for your condition, use whichever is the largest value, and that way you don't have to, so it still repeats off the screen in one of the directions, but that really doesn't concern us. So there you go, diagonal crisscrossing lines, and then vertical lines, horizontal lines, yeah, horizontal lines moving vertically, making some kind of triangle grid.